Yeah. So I'm very happy to welcome you to the third discussion, basically between Edible Archives and Dr. Chan Chi Hang from Hong Kong, Dr. Nitya Sivan from Chennai, and Kelvin Wu, our translator, is here, and I am Tejaswini Niranjana from the Center for Integration Research at Ahmedabad University, who will be the overall moderator of this discussion and the series. What we've done so far, we've had two long sessions where we looked at the common elements, the commonalities between traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda or indigenous Indian medicine. In the first session, we focused on the question of the elements and the doshas as far as Ayurveda is concerned. But I remember very vividly that both in that first session and in the second one, there were two ideas that came out very strongly. One idea is that when you diagnose something, that you're also looking at, when you see the elements of the doshas, you're also able to see how health is defined and illness is defined. It's not, diagnosis is not only about saying what makes someone ill, it's also about saying what can make someone healthy. So that idea, I think I carry with me across the sessions. And the other one coming from the last session, Nitya Sivan made this point that food is medicine. I think this is a good starting point for, like this discussion series that is looking at reorienting taste, looking at eating and healing in Indian and Chinese medical traditions. With that, I will request Edible Archives to start with the first set of questions. We have 4 questions, as you know, and the answer to the first one may be a little more elaborate. I know Nitya has a presentation to show to us as well. So please go ahead. Shalini, Anumitra, whoever.
Yeah. So I'll start. I just want to say very quickly that the last couple of sessions have been, I think they've exceeded all of our expectations about how fruitful the conversation would be and how much one can build, how both the doctors have been able to build on what each other has been saying, both in like responding to what each other has been saying and also building on each other's things. Last time actually we decided to leave the final question because it fit better into this session in terms of the main question being, how does food assimilation and transformation occur in the body? So both traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda have very clear ideas about this sort of very foundational aspect of how food becomes medicine, because it is the process of assimilation and transformation of all the elements in the air, water, etc., earth, fire, everything around us that transforms into food and then further transforms or gets assimilated into our body to have various effects. So I'd like to invite today Dr. Nitya to speak first on this aspect of the question.
So what I'm going to be saying is quite technical. Please stop me at any point if you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm also going to be sharing screen as I speak so that the words don't become a problem in terms of the technicality of the words. So you can see them as you hear them. So basically in Ayurveda, we spoke about the doshas. We spoke about how the physiological factors in balance create health and in imbalance create ill health, disease. Now we are going to go a little bit into what is the body made up of. And the 5 elements, the doshas are physiological factors. The 5 elements also form anatomical structures. So we are looking at what are the tissues that make up the body. So
just to interject for a second, could you quickly remind everybody about doshas, because not everybody will be familiar?
So the doshas are the three physiological factors, vata, pitta, and kapha, loosely translated as wind, fire, and the heavy, stable, cold element, again loosely translated as phlegm, as kapha, which govern the functions of the body, and in increase or decrease from their balance create disease. Anything else that you would like to know? That's it. Okay. Dhatus are basically tissue elements, and upadhatus and malas I will come to later. Before we go into what these things are, I'll be touching upon three aspects of this whole question of food assimilation. So the first aspect is Agni. Agni is what we can translate it into the digestive fire. So we don't look at digestive juices, and we don't look at the chemicals that are secreted in the body as the things that digest food. In Ayurveda, the concept is of a fire. And it is very much like the fire we see outside, in that it digests what is thrown into it. And it is further classified into various types, which is the basic Agni is what is in the stomach, which digests the food we eat. And then there are also aspects of this Agni which digest the various components of what we eat. So you have something called the Bhutagni, which are the fires that digest the various, the 5 elements. So those 5 fires. And then you have the Dhatu Agnis, which are the 7 Agnis that digest each of the components of the tissues that we need for the body. And the concept of Agni is actually, I think, the fundamental concept in health and in health in Ayurveda. Because if your Agni is not working properly, which means you're not assimilating and digesting your food properly, then your body is not functioning properly. So in any disease, even if it is, say, a joint pain, we come back to how is the Agni of this person. Is this person digesting their food properly or not? And if the Agni is deranged, we have to set right that before we even give any medicine to that person. Because if the Agni is not working properly, then there's no point in giving medicine. So this is the approach to Agni. It's very, very central to health in Ayurveda. And this technical aspect of all the Agnis will come into play when I explain how assimilation happens. So the second concept is this concept of Dhatu Parinama, which is that food assimilation. How are the Dhatus formed? How are the tissues formed in the body? How are they? Of course, they are formed in the fetus, but as you grow, what feeds the Dhatus is the food we eat, and therefore, how does it function? And for that, there are different theories which I will explain. The third concept, which underpins, I think, everything in Ayurveda, is like increases like. So this is a basic principle that nobody will question, that something similar will increase something else similar. Dissimilar will decrease. This is a basic concept. So you add the earth element will increase. You add, the simple example given here is mamsa mamsena vartate. If you need muscle, eat muscle. So you eat meat. If you need bone to be strong, then have some extract of bone marrow, cartilage. So it's very direct, that similar things increase similar things and dissimilar things decrease. So basically, the tissues are building blocks of the body. They sustain and nourish the body by definition. There are 7 of them. I have put them out here. The first one is rasa, which is basically the food you eat is transformed by the Jataragni, the digestion. And you have the first end product of digestion. And then you have one by one after the other, Rakta, which is blood, Mamsa, which is muscle, Medas, which is fat, Asthi, which is bone, Majja, which is bone marrow, and finally Shukra, which is the reproductive tissue. Now this is ultimately transformed into Ojas. Ojas in Ayurveda, I don't know enough about the concept of Chi in Chinese medicine, but I understand it as a kind of force. Am I right?
Yes.
It's in Ayurveda, Ojas is more physical thing, and but it can be somewhat correlated because it is the essence of your life. And increase in Ojas or doing things which increase Ojas is going to give you a longer life, and that which decreases Ojas is going to shorten your life. So what is happening is that other than the dhatus, you have the secondary tissues, which are derived when one dhatu is transformed to the other. The dhatu Agni acts on the dhatu, and you have one succeeding dhatu that forms from the previous one. And they also have important functions in the body, but they are not the main supporting structures. So they are called upadhatus. The upadhatus are basically stanya, which is breast milk, formed from the first dhatu, rasa. Artava, which is menstrual blood, formed again from the first dhatu. The tendons and blood vessels formed from blood. Skin and muscle fat formed from the transformation of muscle. And ligaments formed from the transformation of fat. So if you look at it, it's like a flow chart where one dhatu, okay, so I'll get into that later, sorry. Then you have malas, which are waste products, and they also have a function in the body. It's not like they are just waste. They also form one of the pillars of the body. The three main malas are fecal matter, urine, and sweat. And upamalas are other waste products that are formed during the transformation of the dhatus from one to the other. And so you have fecal matter and urine that arise from the first product of digestion. And then you have rasa formed into rakta. You have a kind of waste kapha that is formed. And then rakta into mamsa, you have a waste pitta that is formed. And then you have other kinds of dirt that accumulates, like in your nose, eyes, and ears. Then you have sweat. Then you have nails and hair that are formed from the transformation of the bones. And then the oily, unctuous substance in your eyes, stool, and skin, which are the byproduct of the transformation of the bone marrow. Now, this is the structure. So the approach to this, how does one understand this? There are different theories, and there are pros and cons to each theory, and a theory is only a way of understanding what is happening in the body. So basically the first theory is this Kshiradhati Nyaya, which is basically, they say that like milk transforms to curd, to butter, to ghee, you have the transformation of one dhatu to the next. So you have the formation of the first, and then the second, and then the third in order. The entire thing transforms. And then there is another theory which says, no, the entire thing, if it transforms, then if the second one gets destroyed, the first one gets fully destroyed as well. So that can't be true. So they compare it to the irrigation of fields. They say just like you have separate channels, so you have a canal of water, then one channel supplies water to the first field, and then to the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. You have each dhatu being nourished by its own channel, but one after the other. So again, you have the first one getting formed first, and the second after, so that the last one takes the longest to form. And the third theory to explain this is what is called the pigeon in a field of grains theory, where they say after you harvest a crop, there is a heap of grains on the field. The pigeons come and select what they want to eat. So one theory says that the body, each dhatu selects its own nourishment. So if you're eating a particular food, the Agni works on it, And depending on what is more, what is less, each of the tissues get nourished based on what you eat. And then there is another understanding that all the tissues are nourished at the same time by the end product of digestion. What is common in all of this? Yes. I can't hear you.
You said there are different theories by which one understands how assimilation happens. And you said they are quite different from each other. So do they conflict with one another, or how do you decide which theory to choose?
Actually, it doesn't matter which you choose, because each theory also will have its pros and cons. See, you have something that's happening in the body. A theory is a way to explain it. So each of the theories has their own strengths. Like the first one, we saw the problem with it. If the entire first blood becomes muscle, then if muscle is destroyed, then what happens to the blood? So, so it does not explain it fully. So the second theory gives you another explanation. So whichever theory you choose, there is agreement that the dhatus are transformed and formed by the respective dhatu agni. At each point when the dhatu is formed and transformed, there are two end products. One is what they call the nourishing, the prasada bhaga, which is the portion which nourishes that dhatu itself. So blood will nourish, the body makes sure there's enough blood in your body. And then the essence of that is also used to nourish the next dhatu, muscle. And then there is a waste as a process. Now the waste is also not really a waste we saw. There are different parts of the body which have their own functions. Even the hair, which is considered dead cells, I think in allopathy, has its functions. So for the physician, this is a way of understanding the body, but also that if you combine it with the principle of like increases like, then if you see an increase or decrease in one particular dhatu, then you know what aspect of the diet of the patient you have to change. Because you have an understanding of the food that is going into the patient. We know each food, what are the bhutas involved, what are the doshas it increases and decreases, what it is made of, therefore what dhatu it may increase or decrease. We know the properties of the food. So we see an increase or decrease in any of the dhatus or malas or upamalas or upadhatus, then we know what to change in the diet of the patient based on this understanding.
That was really quite lucid. I wonder if Dr. Chan would respond to some of this or put forward his own theories.
首先好個資料咧係好精彩同埋好詳細。如果同中醫去比較咧，嗰個胃火，咁中醫都有胃火嘅。咁我留意到嗰個報告入邊咧有個胃火，有13種胃火咧。我諗會引領到去一個兩個醫療體系當中咧嗰個側重點啊，係更加即係 Dr. Nithya 嗰度係更加可以分析到生理同埋食療嗰部分。以我嘅理解，即係個人嘅觀察咧，喺香港嘅中醫或者個中醫體系咧，係有講到類似嘅嘢，但係冇咁仔細嘅。而有關食療嘅資訊咧，亦都係大部分嘅醫生冇咁深入去講嘅。咁我希望我以下個報告可以再講到一啲重點俾大家聽。
I think Anumitra is trying to say something also. 1 second.
I just have one question to Nithya, that when you talk about Agni, so is there a way to increase the fire, like the digestive fire, with specific food?
Definitely.
Or practices?
Definitely. There are two specific gunas or qualities of plants that we look out for. One is called Deepana and the other is called Pachana. Deepana is that which stimulates the fire. Example would be dry ginger or pepper. Pachana would be that which digests the food itself, which
Okay.
augments the fire, not just stimulates it, but actually does part of the digestion. Again, any of these herbs are also pachana. Pepper is, I think, also pachana, if I'm right.
So will you give some example of Pachana also, rather than pepper?
We also use combinations of drugs. Let me just look at the book. Can I get back to you?
Yes, yes.
I mean, I can give you a random list, but I can give you a proper list.
No,
also.
no. Let's move on with Dr. Chang, and then when you are ready, you just.
This is a detail I can fill in.
Yeah, yeah.
所以當我收到個問題嘅時候咧，我知道呢一個對任何醫生都係一個2小時以上嘅 presentation 嚟嘅，所以我好大膽咁樣去試一試咧，用一句説話，一個古文嘅一句説話去做一個總結或者嗰個introduction。嗰個內容咧，其實有6、7成係相似嘅，即係同現代嘅西方嘅醫療體系，剩翻個40% 咧就係同2樣嘢有關嘅，就係一開始嗰個説話一開始嘅時候嗰個飲呢個字，同埋最尾有關時間同埋嗰個空間呢兩個 concept， 所以中醫有好多抽象嘅概念啊，好似氣啊同埋水。水喺中醫入邊咧係唔係淨係講身體入邊嘅水分，而係當食物消化，即係被身體消化吸收之後，泛指所有嘅營養，即係包括喺血入邊同埋嗰個體液入邊嘅營養。我希望大家咧嘗試閉上個眼睛去諗一個情景係關於我哋嘅身體嘅。如果我哋有養個魚嘅情況咧，有養魚嘅情況咧，我哋可以想像好多個金魚缸喺個身體入邊。呢啲魚池咧就係我哋個內臟，而養魚最需要嘅嘢咧就係最主要2樣嘢，就係空氣同埋水。所以我哋用個水泵咧，通常係有水泵咧打氣，將啲空氣打入去個唔同嘅魚缸入邊啦。呢啲個水管咧喺個身體就係我哋嘅血管同埋啲淋巴系統。養魚嘅時候咧，嗰個排污系統，我哋會有個嗰個水泵啦，另外就會有個 filtering system 嘅，即係嗰個過濾系統嘅。呢個就係排污系統。所以我哋解釋消化系統同埋我哋嘅生理系統咧，其實有重疊，就係我哋要將呢啲魚缸咧保持喺一個好嘅狀態當中，有充足養分同埋乾淨嘅水。而家嘅現狀咧係好多人去注重營養方面嘅，尤其是西方文化，咁個營養咧就好似啲魚糧咁樣，但係其實更加重要咧，似乎就係個氧氣同埋個排污系統嗰度。所以排污系統嗰度咧，舉個例子就係喺香港嘅飲食文化，我哋中意食一啲開胃嘅菜啊，好似泡菜啊，或者用蘿蔔做嘅前菜啊。另外我哋會飲湯啦，而科學證明咧，其實如果食飯之前飲湯咧，即係增加嗰個水分咧，係幫助消化同埋對嗰個防止過重有幫助。所以喺臟腑方面咧，如果個醃菜咧就係相對個腸胃，而飲湯或者飲水咧，其實就係對於肝同埋腎嗰個清理啦。所以如果再仔細講咧，氣喺邊一度去融合呢一個圖畫咧，就係喺水嗰度，其實要靠氣一啲精微嘅物質，即係 agni， 即係我相信係好似頭先講個 ojas 啊，即係中醫講嘅氣咧，去推動。咁所以氣同埋水對消化系統嗰個重要性係好緊要嘅，好大。呢個就係我第一部分分享嘅嘢。
I had a somewhat trivial question. If it's the matter of liquid that has to help the digestive system to move, why should it be soup? Why not just water?
呢個問題咧係一半係同飲食習慣有關，我相信。所以話水其實係可以嘅，但係因應某啲情況、某啲體質或者某啲時間，我哋就會飲湯啦。而且中國南方嘅文化咧就比較着重湯嘅文化，所以佢哋有好多種，因為個潮濕嘅天氣啊，又或者係即係近海嘅天氣咧，咁佢哋就會即係發展咗好多湯水嘅文化。如果相反喺北方咧，如果中國嘅北方咧，佢哋係唔飲湯嘅，佢哋唯一一個湯咧，或者即係為少數嘅湯咧，就係用餃子煮完餃子嘅水就當湯啦。
Can I add something?
Yes, sure.
There is a very interesting concept which I didn't touch upon in Ayurveda called Anupana, which is an after drink. So,
Sorry, after drink?
After drink. So when you eat your food, what is the best after drink to have based on your body, what you have eaten and your constitution? So, and it's not necessarily water. It may be warm water for some people, cold water for some people. It may be some wine, it may be something else.
I would say tea.
So there are different Anupana as mentioned for different, especially based on what you have eaten. So what can you drink that will enhance the digestion and counteract the dosha aggravating properties of what you have eaten to balance it out?
有一句好有趣嘅，即係中國嘅故事係關於孔子嘅，即係萬世師表。孔子每一餐咧，其實據佢嘅記載咧，佢食飯之前咧都會用薑，即係飲薑。咁而食完飯之後咧，佢就會飲茶。呢個茶咧，其實我相信有兩個用處。即係如果現代嘅醫學咧，可能就係分化過度嘅油脂啦。另外就好緊要，我哋喺上兩次嘅對話當中講過，嗰個腎啊，即係喺消化入邊咧，尤其是喺香港咧，少咗一個好重要嘅腎，心神，即係好專心，好關注嗰個食物，食完之後咧，去養一養嗰個心神，用茶。但係如果實際嘅答案咧，香港好多人係飲一啲快速飲品啊，凍檸檬茶嗰啲咁樣。
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It was not clear.
Probably bad. Sometimes good.
And the temperature of the food after you eat, that what you are drinking, the temperature is important?
Yes, I mean in Ayurveda, yes.
So what is the temperature? Like it should be lukewarm to warm or cold also?
Mostly. So again, for instance, I just took out that page. It says it should be taken water if you drink after eating. It should be taken cold after consuming curd, honey, barley, wheat, and all other foods which cause burning sensation during digestion. And also in the autumn and summer seasons in India. The 6 seasons will not apply in China, but we have that hot autumn in between rain and winter. So that is a very hot season, and also summer is very hot. So then you have some cold, means not refrigerated, obviously, maybe kept in a mud pot or maybe kept with a little khas root in it, or room temperature water. Hot water after consuming foods prepared from ingredients which are hard to digest, and also in all the other seasons which are colder seasons. And mostly I think people, especially if they're going out to eat in a restaurant, they're eating very heavy food. So unless the food itself is very heating, then hot water, warm water is probably a good idea.
What are the other?
Sorry, one second. And does the temperature, like, is it as important, the temperature in traditional Chinese medicine for soup? I mean, to me, soup is always warm, but is that always the case?
有啲中醫咧我會聽到佢話，你到死之前都唔好飲凍嘢，涼嘅嘢都唔好。但係我唔中意，主要咧都係根據嗰個情況。我舉兩個例子，就係一個，如果我哋有肝火咧，即係一個人嗰個肝臟佢個火特別強嘅時候咧，嗰個人係自動會飲好多凍嘢，你阻止唔到佢。另外一個就係個日本。即係我哋都上次講過，日本係個飲食文化裏面嘅魚生同埋啤酒咧，其實係佢哋日日都飲嘅。咁其實都係因為佢哋嗰個胃火同埋肝火過盛，所以呢個就係兩個好好嘅例子。
And that liver heat is caused by the foods that they eat, right?
唔夠瞓會係其中一個，同埋壓力。
I think there are so many questions to ask, but we don't have much time and we should need to move ahead. I will try to remember this so that maybe in the last session we can try to address it. Shalini, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, so I think that we've been talking about the next question actually, that what are the properties of various ingredients and how do we understand the interaction of these ingredients in the body? But let's move on then to the third question, which is what are the substances that conflict with each other? Again, I think both Dr. Nithya and Dr. Chan have just touched on this, but what about food substances that are in conflict with each other? And is there anything that we should universally avoid while cooking and eating in that context of conflict?
Nithya, go ahead, please.
Screen again. So, okay, we're skipping the properties of ingredients. So,
But please share it with us later. I'm very curious to know.
Yes, please.
Just briefly, that ingredients are very, very deep. I mean, understood in a very detailed way, and their actions also in a very detailed way. And how do we know this information? Again, there are various compendiums of plants and their properties. The go-to book is the Bhava Prakasha, which you can get a copy of online even, I think. And there are other nigantus which talk about various plants and various groups of food and on all of their properties. Now, the concept of incompatible, what we call viruddham. Basically, what is the definition of a viruddhahara is that which aggravates the doshas greatly, but does not expel them from the body, and hence cause an imbalance in the dhatus. So you can have, for instance, you can induce a great aggravation of dosha in the body. For instance, you can, in treatment, we have something called induced vomiting or induced purgation, in which case you're giving a substance which aggravates the dosha and you end up vomiting. And that is done therapeutically, which is different than if you eat something and you're digesting it, but then it aggravates the doshas in the body. And therefore, it will go sit somewhere in your body and cause a problem. There are different kinds of incompatibles. Chief among them are substances. Don't mix this and this, like in cooking. There are other kinds of interesting kinds of incompatibles. I'll give you a couple of examples, which is proportions of mixture and processes of cooking and things like that. So some very, there are pages of information on this, but I've pulled out some obvious things which are in common use. chief among them being milk and many things. So you don't mix milk with fish, you don't mix milk with salt, you don't mix milk with anything sour. So I think this whole concept of berry smoothie is out. Strawberry milkshake, all of that stuff, blueberries, this, that, all the different breakfast things that people are eating now. And milk and leafy vegetables. So I've seen, like, in an Indian Italian restaurant, spinach being added to a white sauce and served. And similarly, curd and chicken, which is so common. Everybody marinates chicken and curd in the restaurants. And then seafood with many things, a jaggery being one of them. Beer and milk pudding, kheer, what we call in India, in Hindi, and beer, and specifically pigeon meat fried in mustard oil. I don't think anybody eats pigeons anymore, but
oh no, they do.
Do? Okay. So pigeon meat fried in mustard oil. Then the list of meats is just fantastic. I boar meat, this meat, there are all kinds of meats. Don't mix this meat and that meat. So many lists are there.
I really want to know the meat list. Please send.
I'll share it with you separately.
Yes.
Okay. And then urad dal with radish in one dish, and leafy vegetables in butter. Again, frying spinach in butter, I've seen people do. So that is not. Banana and curd. I know people who have it like a meal. They'll put muesli, they'll put curd, and they'll chop up some banana and eat it up. And fish and jackfruit in one meal. So these, I think, are obvious common combinations people may end up eating, which are not good. And I think milk and fish, curd and chicken, milk and salt, milk with a lot of things actually is mentioned. And fish also with a lot of things are mentioned. And then other kinds of incompatibles are, there is one that says you do not mix honey and ghee in equal quantities. Now, it's very unlikely that we will end up, in many medicines, we add honey and ghee together. So we just have to be careful not to have exact same quantities, which is unlikely, but to watch out for that. Similarly, processing, they say heating curds or heating wine or heating honey is absolutely not okay. And keeping ghee in a bronze vessel for more than 10 days transforms it in a way in which it becomes bad for the body. Then there's one activity that they say, which is immersing oneself in cold water soon after prolonged exposure to sunlight. So you're like walking in the hot sun and you're feeling really, really hot. Your body is just boiling and jumping into cold water, like a pool or a cold shower. Something that will definitely affect according to the book, it says it will affect you'll either get some skin problem or you'll get some vision problem. So these are things also we may end up doing, a lot of these things. So these are some of the examples I pulled out.
Perhaps we could have Dr. Chan speak about similar incompatibles in Chinese food.
OK， 我諗答呢個問題有兩個層面，一個係理論嘅層面，一個實際層面。如果實際嘅層面，雖然香港有好多人對健康意識都增加啦，但係我相信大部分人都係靠住嗰個喜好嚟飲食嘅，所以有好多古靈精怪嘅菜式都會產生，譬如意大利人會接受嘅菠蘿披薩咁啦，或者三文魚披薩。咁所以我哋答呢個問題就由嗰個理論層面嗰度講少少。中醫咧用好多種唔同嘅方法去演繹呢個問題嘅，由五行啦，用五行去分啦，用氣味去分啦，用臟腑去分啦，用形態去分類，跟住再去選擇適當嘅食物，或者唔啱嘅有對抗嘅食物。咁我哋先由第一次我哋講嗰個五行表嗰度同大家解釋。譬如咧如果紅色嘅食物咧屬於火嘅，咁如果喺生理上面咧佢就會對腸胃 即係土有益。咁所以呢個就屬於火生土。咁如果從病理角度咧，如果一個人有腎病咧，即係佢個水，即係個腎有問題咧，其實一般我哋會用一啲屬土，即係黃色，譬如主流穀物類嘅東西咧，去減輕個腎嘅負擔，再而減輕佢個病情。另外一個有趣嘅指示咧，就係根據時間，尤其是係季節。有一本書咧係比較實在啲去記錄呢一個情況，叫做《千金方》，係唐代一個醫生寫嘅。咁裡面提到咧，譬如佢話春72日，省酸增甘，以養脾氣，即是話春天個72日入邊咧，我哋應該唔好食咁酸，應該食多啲甜嘢，去保護我哋個消化系統。咁呢個咧係中醫講就係木克土。當佢木即係春天咧，去克住土咧，即係話我哋春天個腸胃係會比較差，所以我哋適宜食一啲好似頭先講 increase 即係增加嗰個腸胃嘅食物，就係甜味。所以同樣道理，第二個例子就係夏天。夏天我哋就係唔會食咁多苦嘢，因為佢會增加心臟去影響肺嘅情況，所以我哋就會食多啲對肺有益嘅味道，嗰個就係辣。譬如冬天嗰3個月咧，如果喺呢一本著作上面就會講到適宜飲1-2杯，每一日飲1-2杯嘅藥酒。一去到春天嘅時候即刻停止，咁就可以咩病都冇啦。所以就係我頭先講，即係中醫嘅系統入邊咧，都會比較抽象去形容呢一啲概念。我亦都希望即係透過呢嗰個研討會咧，我會知道多啲實際嘅操作。
So my suggestion is that if Nitya and Dr. Chan have prepared any documents or can share some text either via Kelvin or by ourselves, we can share them on the common email thread, and then we can just download and keep all of them. So when at the end of the sessions, after we broadcast them, we can put out also a written statement that could help people to follow up some of the ideas.
That would be nice.
Yeah. I think we are out of time, but I did want to also sort of flag this question, because very often our Edible Archives is actually a very high-end restaurant, a fine dining restaurant. People go there because they desire to eat certain kinds of food, not because they want to get healthy. So I would be very curious to know how Edible Archives, who are very responsible restaurant owners and chefs, how would they reconcile people's desire, which would demand anything at any time, with the things that they are very concerned about: sustainability, appropriate food, TCM, Ayurveda. How do you reconcile this? And I hope that when you put out your recipes at the end of these sessions, we will get a glimpse of that. I wonder, do you want to quickly say something about that, or shall we save it for the next discussion?
No, I wanted to say this because that actually goes with all the conversations we are having today. What we try to do, that we try to balance a dish within the same dish, and then but people still want, now in a restaurant, when people come, they order 3-4 things or 5-6 things. Now we don't have any control there. We try to say that, but we don't, anyway, we don't put anything in the menu which is out of the season. We don't put anything in the menu which it doesn't go with. We work with sustainable fishing, so we only use fish and seafood which are sustainably gathered, and like we know the people who are doing it. So it's a very try and error kind of process, but we try to do that. But we also meet very we meet sometimes we get like some requests which are very difficult to handle. Like we have something called dosha balancing elixir in our this thing, which changes every time during, like if it is lunchtime, dinner time, according to weather and all that. So somebody wanted to add that to whiskey. So what do you do? So we had to take this thing, and we said that we cannot do it. We will give it to you separately. Now it's up to you. We suggest that you don't have them together because this has no effect on that. But then if you do that, you take a call and do it yourself. So, but at least through this, we try to have a conversation. Like sometimes we serve only small shrimp in the restaurant and not the big prawns, because that is not the time when you get the big prawns, or the big prawns are naturally available. So it's mostly frozen around that time, whoever is using. And we get lot of resistance from customers that, oh, why the prawns are suddenly small. Then we try to tell
Curious,
people.
I'm curious, when is this big prawn not seasonally available?
Like all, there are a lot of times which is not available. Say, like there are various reason also. Say now post New Year, there is always a very dip in the availability. That is not for natural this thing. That is for the availability this thing. But then around this time again, the frozen things comes in the market. So we try to avoid that. You look, you observe, you talk to your vendors and fishermen that we work with, and then we see that. And also right now in Goa we are getting very good. There is a red kind of shrimp which is very small in size, but this is now in the market. And so we try to then incorporate that, just to talk also through our menu, through our work. We try to converse to our guests and tell them about that these things exist. Otherwise people have forgotten about season, and we deal with this in a very practical day to day level.
我都
Yes,
想回
Charlie?
應一下
Yes.
一個非常同意頭先嗰個講話。如果病人問我嘅時候咧，即係因為我唔係廚師嘛，咁但係我都會建議即係兩樣嘢嘅，因地同埋因時。記得第一次我哋都講過，因時因地因人。咁其實比較着重咧，其實都係如果作為一個廚師咧，我嘅想像就係因地同埋因時。譬如佢哋會問有好多健康嘅飲食模式啊，譬如係沖繩嘅飲食啊、西非嘅飲食啊、地中海嘅飲食啊、法國嘅飲食啊。如果喺香港，我哋都係會揀一啲好類似我哋食開嘅，即係譬如日本沖繩嘅飲食咧就會受落啲，就唔係法國嗰啲好多內臟啊、好多紅酒啊，同埋即係好多脂肪嘅嗰個健康飲食。除咗因為我哋個氣候位置近，可能我哋冇3個鐘頭嘅時間去食一餐午飯咁咯。
So I wonder if on that note, we should conclude this session. It's been delightful as always to be able to talk to the two doctors. And we look forward very much to the next session. It will be on January 15th, but at 9 o'clock India time, 11:30 in Hong Kong. We will send the usual reminder and send you the questions again. But in the meantime, if there is material that we can share on the email thread, that would be really nice and can prepare better, I think, for the last round. So see you all and have a very good day.